Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Monday. It's December 2nd. It's 2019. It's the last month, 2019. We've been doing this now for a couple of years. And, well, we got a lot to talk about. Always have a lot to talk about. Tonight we're going to talk about Angela Merkel and the internecine party politics that are likely to shape Germany's future, and by extension, not only Germany's future, but that of the European Union. It'll tie into Brexit. It'll tie into U.S. financial markets and a variety of other things. But as always, if you like what you hear tonight, or if you're a big fan of the channel, please like, subscribe, bang the notification bell for notifications, because these live streams happen every Monday night at 8 p.m. and every Friday night at 8:30. For those of you who are new, I swear like a sailor. So if that doesn't work for you, you know what to do. All right. You can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. You can also find me on Strategic Culture once every couple of weeks .org. You can also find me over at moneyandmarkets.com every Friday or so. And you can also support the channel by signing up and becoming a patron over at my Patreon at patreon.com/goldgoatsandguns. All the links are down below in the description. You can find them all. You can also download and install the Brave browser to help support not only myself as a registered publisher, as a verified publisher, but also other places that are as well. And you can tip the BAT tokens that you earn by browsing with Brave. You can use those to tip your favorite content providers. I'm fully plugged into Brave. I've been using it about 6 months now. It's a fantastic browser. It's quick. It's fast. At a minimum, it gets rid of all of those nasty trackers and the ads and all the other stuff that tracks you around the internet, sucks up your bandwidth, which you pay for, and Google, Facebook, and the rest of them all benefit from. From that perspective alone, fuck them. Install Brave. Get it over and done with. It also the reward system now works on their mobile versions of the browsers as well, with the latest updates. So for those of you who weren't interested in using Brave before because you only used it was only available on the desktop, guess what? The iOS app is now fully functional. Works like a champ. So does Android, from what I understand. Alrighty, then. Since we've got a few people into the channel, we're looking at a solid 25 people. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving weekend. I know I wasn't here on Friday like I normally am, and I didn't announce that I wouldn't be here, but sorry, I had people and I had friends in town, and I took the night off, and that's just the way it is. As a matter of fact, I took like most of the weekend off, and I don't know about you guys, but I really, really needed it. So we're gonna come back hot and heavy tonight. I want to talk about Merkel. Let's get right into it, because it's something that happened over the weekend, that I've been expecting to talk about for weeks now, wondering what the outcome of it would be, and it finally came to pass. And that is, Angela Merkel, as Chancellor of Germany, is in a grand coalition, as she has been for many years, with the Social Democrats, or the SPD. Now, Merkel's party is the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union. She's also, and that party itself is aligned with the Bavarian CSU. At the end of the day, it's a grand coalition of center-right Merkel, nominally, and center-left, the Social Democrats, that stands for nothing except globalism, neoliberalism, and more EU firster nonsense in integration. That's what it ultimately stands for. That political ideology, or lack of political ideology, or lack of nationalist policy, is wearing very thin all across Europe. We talk about this on this channel all the time. It's happened. Brexit is one of those things. One of the symptoms of this. What we're seeing in Italy is the same thing. The fact that Spain can't put together a majority government because of how fractious its electoral bases at this point. Pretty much 6 parties poll in double digits in Greece. It's not in Greece, in Spain. Pardon me. It's crazy. We're seeing radical shifts in places like Greece, right, where Syriza, the hardcore left-wing party that was elected to take the Greeks out of the European Union, or at least to challenge them on debt relief back in 2015. In 2014, could not cut the mustard. They were thrown out, and I can't think of the party's name now that's in charge, and it's slipping my mind. But we have a center-right party. I can remember the guy's name. It's Mitsisakis is in charge now, but I can't, for the life of me, remember the party that he represents. So that is nominally considered populism by the European establishment, and certainly by the Western establishment that wants more and more political integration and more of a globalist implementation and trans sovereignty, or whatever you want to call it, lack of sovereignty, destruction of national sovereignty. And any hint of national sovereignty is immediately equated with Nazism. So, and we're getting a little tired, and everybody's getting a little tired of this rhetoric, and it's really beginning to show up in the UK. And as well, it's not quite gotten to that point in Germany yet, but it's getting there slowly. So we have a situation in Germany where the polls have shifted since the 2017 election significantly, and that we have a similar situation in Germany that we have in Italy. And we've talked about this before as well, where in Italy, in the early 2018 elections, the elections that happened in January of 2018, Lega, the Lega Nord, which represented by Matteo Salvini, only scored about 17%, but that was far higher than everybody was expecting them to. Today, they're polling at 34%. Five-Star Movement polled at 29% in that election, or no, 32% in that election, and almost 33%. And they're now polling less than 20%. Right? And it was March of 2018. Thank you, John. It was 2 months early. I couldn't remember if it was May to March, it was pulled forward, or March to January. I'm sorry, but at the end, 5G is frying my brain. Thanks a lot, Magazino. I really appreciate that. I don't even use 5G, and I never put my phone up to my ear, but regardless. So the polls have shifted tremendously, and yet the government still holds the parliament is represented by the March 2018 election results, because the political establishment in Italy will not allow the people to go back to the polls. Matteo Salvini's tried to force a general election in September. He failed. We're now in December, and 5-Star is now, the anti-establishment party, 5-Star, is now in bed with, in a tenuous coalition government with the very establishment Democrats, PD. Well, Merkel's got a similar problem in Germany, because her CDU is no longer polling much more. The CDU and CSU together are only polling about 28%. And really, 8% of that is the CSU. So Merkel nationally is only polling about 20% in Germany. Okay. So 6 to 8% of that number is CSU. And they're firmly a Bavarian party. And this SPD is only polling like 14%. And as a matter of fact, they're polling lower now. And this is a party that governed Germany for decades, post-World War II. And the SPD has collapsed from over 35% numbers just 6 or 7 years ago to 14%. Now they are polling less than the upstart right-wing party, AfD, or Alternative for Germany. And that's deeply embarrassing to the Social Democrats, the SPD's leadership. Now, they had, over the course of November, they were having a leadership contest, electing new leadership for the SPD. And that vote was going on all through November, and the results were just announced on November 30th. And guess what? The current finance minister for Germany, Olaf Scholz, was the leader of the party, he and one other. They've been ousted by a much more progressive, much more anti-Merkel, much more contentious pair. Don't remember their names off the top of my head. That's not important. What's important is that this further undermines Merkel's political viability at this moment in time. Moreover, as we've talked about previously, the 3 state elections that happened in Brandenburg, Saxony, and Thuringia earlier in the year, in September and October, yielded results that are going to have made it almost impossible for anybody, any of those states, to form a government. Okay. Because of that, it's putting tremendous pressure on the excuse me, hold on, back up. It's putting tremendous pressure on Merkel in the German upper house, in the Bundesrat. The Bundesrat has very weird representation rules. And because Saxony, Brandenburg, and Thuringia cannot form governments, or at least they haven't yet, and that lagging was on my end, by the way. Because they can't form governments, it's left the Bundesrat in a very nebulous position, because they proportion seats in the Bundesrat based on the coalitions that form in the state government. So if the Greens and the CDU get together and form a coalition in Thuringia, well, then they get represented wholly in the Bundesrat. And it's not even proportional at that point. It's that all of Thuringia's seats are voted as a block. And so whatever the state government feels about a particular national proposed legislation coming out of the Bundestag, the one party in the coalition can veto with all of those seats. And Merkel has used that to her advantage by using the Greens, and who've been minority representation. So they have minority representation in so many different states around Germany, and yet they have veto power, majority veto power in the Bundesrat. She's been doing this for a long time, and using the Greens, who are kind of fake populists or fake. They're very establishment. The German Greens are very much about EU integration. They're very much globalists and the rest of it. And that has been the means by which Merkel's been able to keep power, even while she's losing control of the Bundestag. Which is why, by the way, she refuses to allow the CDU, even at the state level, to form coalition governments with AfD, because under no circumstances will she give AfD any kind of power within the Bundesrat. Right? So what Jonathan's asking, so the Bundesrat is like the Senate pre-17th Amendment. Yes and no. Okay? Because individual senators always still had a vote in their Senate, right? So Florida sends 2 senators. One could vote for the legislation, one could vote against the legislation. In the Bundesrat, the whole of Thuringia votes as a block. They have 4 votes, and the number of votes they have is based on population number. They have 4 votes. Then 4 votes go for or against as a block for the legislation. There's no splitting of the votes. It's not like they get seats, and they don't. It's not part of the coalition agreement that, well, we'll send 3 to the Bundesrat and you'll send 1. No, it doesn't work that way. It's completely fucking insane, to be honest with you. It's a terrible form of government, what the Germans have. It's a terrible form of government, actually, because it absolutely gives unbelievable power to minority parties in a country with 6 freaking parties. So, but what's really important, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but what's really important about what happened this weekend is that the SPD is no longer run by, for lack of a better term, their globalist wing. Their populist wing of the SPD has effectively taken over the party. And so gone are the Martin Schulzes, who ran as the chancellor candidate for the SPD in 2017. He's gone. Scholz is gone. And we're now staring at people who could very well challenge Merkel. Now, let's ask ourselves, what's the possibility of Merkel actually being deposed? There's a number of possible scenarios here, and I'm not fully convinced that Merkel is going to leave power. Because at the end of the day, the German president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, is a Merkel ally. He's going to pull the same thing that Sergei Mattarella did in Italy, which is he's going to give Merkel every opportunity, if the SPD pulls out of the coalition, to try and form a coalition with somebody else, or avoid a general election altogether and allow Merkel to keep a minority government in power. Now, I don't know all the rules here as to how that would happen. For a general election to happen, the SPD could pull out of the coalition, and then Steinmeier could say, okay, well, fine, Merkel, you can't form a government with a majority government. You can run a caretaker government until 2021. For Merkel to be deposed, there has to be, I think it has to be that has to be a vote of no confidence against her. It's the same kind of thing that they pulled in Italy, where the Five-Star pulled out of the coalition, or Salvini pulled out of the coalition. Five-Star and everybody refused to pass a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister Conte, and then then they stitched up a government, which is the same thing they'll try and do in Germany. So in order for Merkel to be deposed, a vote of no confidence has to go through the Bundestag. Now, here's the problem. The SPD, in doing that, will be voluntarily giving up massive amounts of power because they are currently massively overrepresented in the Bundestag. But the question is, we're only a year and 9 months away from the next election in Germany. The last one was in October of 2017. We're more than halfway through the term. And they could call the election far earlier than that. Merkel always puts it off to the last possible minute because she's always trying to push the polls in her direction away from, by shifting policy 6 to 9 months before the election in order to try and shore up her position. She always does this. She did it so the election could be as early as, I don't know, probably June of 2021. So we're only 18 months away. On the outside, we're only at 18 months away. So the SPD could sometime in the first half of 2020 finally just pull the plug on the coalition and call for a vote of no confidence. AfD, they'll vote for it. The Greens will probably vote for it. The CDU will say no, and if the SPD votes yes for it, it'll pass, and then Merkel will be gone. But the SPD will probably take 4 or 5 months in trying to fight Merkel here, the new leadership, rebrand the party as a far more leftist party than it currently is, block and oppose Merkel legislatively in the Bundestag, and then we see where we are. And at some point, completely new to her at any functional level, Germany won't have a functioning government, and at some point it'll have to collapse. So it'll be interesting. See, the thing is Guy's index says, look, no political group ever gives up massive amounts of power. Well, they will if their polling numbers continue to drop because they're in the coalition and the electorate is unhappy with the government. If they're the ones that pull the plug on the government and say, that's enough, let's remove Merkel from power, and Merkel's popularity is on the wane. If that's the case, they would actually see a bump in the polls over where they are. It's like, it's a big shit sandwich. We all got to take a bite. Well, they would take a smaller bite than they would otherwise. And so it's an interesting calculus. The closer we get to election time, the earlier they could call for an election early. And especially if things continue to go badly, because the German economy is terrible. The longer they stay in this coalition, and the longer, especially if the Brexit vote comes down against Germany. Okay, if the Tories win the projected majority that they're looking that we think we're staring at here, it's going to be bad for Germany. If Donald Trump continues to try and put, if Donald Trump wants to, he can put the screws to Merkel in every way. And he will. Which is why Merkel's saying nice things about NATO, which is why she's trying to walk back all of Macron's statements about NATO being brain dead and not having a proper mandate. And Merkel's like trying to back all this up because she doesn't want Trump breathing down her neck. So it's really important to understand this dynamic that Merkel is trying desperately to get Nord Stream 2 finished. She's already in Trump's shithouse over that. And while still talking a nice game on NATO and the Minsk agreement and trying to implement the Minsk agreements with Russia over Ukraine, there's all of these things that she's trying to juggle and get over the line and hold on to for as long as possible. But that status quo that she's so assiduously worked to try and hold everything in place is falling apart around her. She's created this terrible, terrible metastable situation with the Germans in a bad place. They've run their mercantilist empire for as far as they could, and now now the German people are going to pay the price for Merkel's lack of vision, and their steadfast defense of the euro, which was a complete and utter mistake in every way. And it's benefited Germany only insofar as it's subsidized old school German industrialists, the automotive industry and whatnot, but they haven't innovated. And there's no pan-European supply chain, domestic European supply chain to fuel that. No, she's just hollowed out. Germany's just hollowed out the whole of Europe's industrial base, sucked all the money up to them in the form of rent and cheap BMWs and Audis. And there's been no innovation. And so the German economy is going to, when the euro collapses, the German economy is going with it. And it's already there. And so at some point, the political calculus will be ending the coalition and ending Merkel's reign will be the better choice for everybody. So, at least that's the way I see it. Where are we here? Only been talking 20 minutes. All right. So, I was talking with I just did a 2-hour chat this morning, as a matter of fact, with Crypto Rich, who may or may not be in the channel tonight, and Alexander Mercuris over at the Durant. I finally got a chance to meet Alexander this morning. We did a 2.5-hour chat this morning. Rich will be putting that out in stages over the course of the week. So if you're not subscribed to Rich's channel, you should be. Username Crypto Rich. I've done a number of live streams with him. I've done a number of videos with him. They're in my channel. And it's a really good talk. Alexander and I riff off of each other beautifully. I'm gonna try and have Alexander on my podcast at some point in the near future, if not, on a regular basis, because we got along on like a house on fire, which was great. But we talked about this situation with Merkel extensively in this, and how that interfaces with Brexit, and how it interfaces with the fact that Deutsche Bank is most likely the cause of the insane amounts of term repos that the Fed is having to execute in order to keep the dollar liquidity markets, the dollar funding markets, liquid. We have protests in Hong Kong. We have banks in China that are blowing up. We have banks in Hong Kong that are probably in trouble. So, this stuff, it's all coming to a head over the course of the next, well, aside from the fact, not just the next 45 days, right? But I think the next 10 days are very, very interesting. Before we go too much farther, I want to go over the list of events that are going to happen over the course of the next 10 days. And I'm going to list off the top of my head, and I know I'll be missing some. And think about how far-ranging the effects of these events can and will be pushing into 2020. We have, at a minimum, we have the British elections on the 12th. This weekend, we have the NATO summit, 70th anniversary of NATO. And there are functional splits within the coalition. Macron wants a complete overhaul of NATO's mandate. Merkel doesn't want anything to change. Trump just wants everybody to pay if they want to stay. I mean, the whole thing is a freaking mess. And then, of course, the globalists want NATO to advance as far as possible to encircle Russia. You have Putin meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Merkel and Macron on the 9th. You have the OPEC meeting happening on the 5th and 6th at the same time that officially the Aramco IPO will happen. You have the Russians will attend that meeting and to let everybody know how they're going to vote on, or what their recommendation will be on whether or not they're going to keep the production cuts in place or whether they're going to expand them or not. So all these things are connected. Okay, I'm probably missing a couple of other things. So Putin is going to be no, Putin's not meeting with Erdogan. Or is he? No, he's not. These are the things that I've identified off the top of my head. We have the IG report coming out this week over Trump and the investigation into the Pfizer warrants and all of that stuff. I think about everything that's happening and think about how all of these things could wind up. Oh, and the CDU party conference is coming up. The SPD's official party conference is on the 5th and 6th as well. Like, that's when they're going to decide whether to pull out of the coalition or not. Because the new leadership is now going to set the agenda. Power of Siberia just got turned on today. Turkstream gets inaugurated on January 8th. The Senate's going to try and fast track through a bill to sanction all the companies currently trying to finish up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Okay. It's crazy what's happening. And all of these things, and then, oh, I'm sorry, did I forget to mention the British fucking elections? Right? So you have all this stuff happening at the same time. And when the Fed meets the Wednesday of that week as well. So the Fed's going to be what, on the 11th? Or is it the 18th this year? I'm not even sure. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a Fed meeting on the second Wednesday of December, the 11th. Like, all of this stuff's happening all at the same time. Every bit of it. And at least any three of those things could blow up the freaking world. And the guy laughing about all of it is Putin. Because money's flowing into Russia. Tourism in Crimea is through the roof. 7.5 million people this year. Higher than, you have to go back to Soviet days for the numbers to be that good. And it's crazy what's going to happen over the course of the next few weeks. And so any of these things could blow everything sky high. That the markets aren't prepared for. And when you think about it from that perspective, it's clearly a mug's game to try and predict what's going to happen next. The best you can do is identify it all and just say, well, But if you don't think that there's a distinct possibility that Merkel's not going to survive 6 months as Germany's chancellor, Stoyanovich says NATO needs a war to prevent any of these events from being the Black Swan event. The Black Swan's already here. The Black Swan happened in September. They've just papered it over for 6 months. Right. I mean, if there's not a trade deal, Meowcow's saying if there's going to be a trade deal on the 15th of December, if there isn't, China's going to pull products off the markets if the tariffs go over 25%. Oh, by the way, that winter storm that, you know, was dumped 2 feet of snow on most of the United States, do you know what that's doing to what's left of this year's harvest? The USDA is flat out fucking lying about harvest yields here in the United States and Canada. The numbers are going to be horrific, and at some point the markets are going to wake up to this. At least China's going to sanction Rubio. You should. I thought the Black Swan happened in 2008. Well, yeah, that's one of them. Brett Harris says, you know, thinking about sanctioning all the companies doing work on Nord Stream 2. So much for free market competition by our Republican Senate. Got news for you, dude. We don't practice free markets here in the United States. We talk about them. We don't practice them. We haven't practiced free markets in the United States since before World War II. Been a command and control economy, military-driven command and control economy in the United States for a long time. Problem is, by any rational or objective metric, problem is the rest of the world was so fucking Marxist that we look good by in comparison. What do I think of Jim Rickers? I think Jim is a very interesting guy who's part spook, and you should listen to very carefully. Because he's usually telling you that what you need to hear, but he's also not telling you certain things that you need to hear. So you got to read between the lines of what Jim's not telling you, because that's what the real truth is. But I like Jim. I'd like to meet Jim one of these. Bill W says, we made 31 bushels an acre in soybeans this year in Missouri. Is that good or bad? We can only hope, Sandy, that the Brexit Party pushes good turnout where they're running in the UK elections. If so, they're going to take a lot more seats than people were expecting. One of the things about the British elections, I think, that people are missing, and no one wants to go out on a limb here and say what needs to be said, which is that, yeah, 60 is good. That's what I thought. That 31 was bad. And Stan, I'll get to your question in just a second, but let's talk about the Brexit Party real quick. No one really wants to go out on a limb and say that the Brexit Party could upside surprise. The polls are all gaslighting everybody to the point of trying to downplay the idea that the Brexit Party is going to win a seat. The Tories are obviously in the mode of trying to shore up their party, betray Brexit fundamentally, and neuter Farage at the same time. Corbyn is doing a fine job of neutering himself. So that's that. Stan Minchow asks, is China's banking system really struggling as much as we're being led to believe? I can't answer that directly, but what I can say is the following. When the information is coming from obvious places like that have ties to Steve Bannon, like Kyle Bass and others, I don't believe it. I believe that the United States is pushing the Chinese as far as they possibly can. So we can. And they're doing so by trying to destroy Hong Kong as a destination to clear dollars for yuan, because it still is the most valuable yuan clearing house with the rest of the world on the planet. But there's going to be a lot of regional banks that fail. And I've been saying for a long time that China's going to ride they're going to ride this out in a controlled chaos kind of manner. And it's going to feel like they've lost control of everything. But the truth of the matter is that China can wind down half of these regional banks and no one would even bat an eye. Okay? So, and it won't materially affect the Chinese Communist Party. And it won't materially affect China's foreign exchange reserves or the rest of it. Okay. So I would say, yeah, there's a lot of banks that are going to fail. There's a lot of businesses that are going to fail. It'll be necessary. And every one of them will be trumpeted to high heaven that China's going to fall tomorrow. And then it won't. And they'll cry wolf only so many times. And then we'll stop believing them. If you think that the Chinese are so fucking stupid that they were able to bail out the Russians and stop the Russian economy from collapsing, and they were so fucking stupid that they kept the Turkish economy from collapsing last year, that they're not going to save their own goddamn economy? I don't know. I think Farage can win, and to go back to it, circle back to it. I think it's possible that Farage is going to take upwards of 20 or 25 seats. But no one wants to make that prediction other than me, and I don't have anything to lose by saying it. So I'll say it. I think that's what's going on. Thordum asks, Tom, do you think China will announce their true gold reserves? Max Kaiser saying there are rumors they're going to do that in 6 to 9 months. The Chinese, one of the things I was talking with Alexander Merkel about this morning was that there's going to come a moment in the next year or so where China and Russia will strike back economically against the American financial market. They will lean on our markets and on Europe when the time is right. They will hold that card until the last possible moment, in the hope that the United States and the West will sue for peace in this war. But I got news for you. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because it's not going to happen. We will not. And I'm not just talking about us. I mean, this is now the Western European entitlement set, the Davos crowd. Okay, those transnational globalists who think they run the world will not sue for peace with the dirty Russians and the subhuman Chinese. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So we're going to fight this thing out to the bitter end. It's going to be a game of Go played between a master and an apprentice, and the apprentice will always think that he can win, and the master will still beat him. Master keeps offering him a face-saving loss. Apprentice keeps saying, no, let's play it out. I can win. I know I can win. Okay. Offered you 7 stones for the next game. You want to lose by 30? Okay. You're going to lose by 30. And that's what's happening right now. I identified this like 5 years ago. This is what was happening. And this is what's happening. And it just keeps playing out exactly the way I always thought it would. So do I think that China is going to announce their gold reserves at some point? Next 6 to 9 months? I think that's a way to shock the fucking crap out of the markets. Just like they did when they announced how they went from like having 100 tons to having 1,000 tons of gold. The last time they did this in like 2013 or whatever, and the markets went ballistic, and the gold market went nuts. Morgan Stanley lost 140, a hell of a lot more than $140, but probably 140 million or 140 million maybe by betting against the Turkish lira. Now there are employees, which seems like intelligence agents in their bank, which are under serious investigation. Thoughts? Yeah, Morgan was told that they were going to blow up the Turkish lira, and then the lira didn't blow up the way it should have, because Erdogan was not removed from power. Because the Chinese came in and the Qataris came in, they stabilized the market, and then Morgan was caught. We engage in hybrid war tactics trying to destroy currencies around the world. That's what we do. Brett Harris reminds us that Bill Browder, our favorite ex-American, now British, former Russian financier, has 50 MEP lackeys to petition the EU Foreign Affairs Council for a Magnitsky Act next week. Yeah, I mean, that's only 50. That's actually, that number is actually down from what he had before, Brett. So I think it's not that. I don't know that it'll go anywhere. We'll see what happens. But he's been trying that for like 5 years now. China doesn't really rely on Hong Kong, really. Yeah, it does. For offshore yuan payments, yeah, it's still 75% of the offshore yuan market. 75% of yuan is cleared offshore. It's cleared through Hong Kong. You destroy Hong Kong economy, you destroy its ability to do business, you destroy the flow of dollars into Hong Kong, you can hurt China really badly. What is the Azov Battalion doing in Hong Kong? Good question. The Azov Battalion, for those of you who don't know, are a bunch of Ukrainian Nazis. What are Ukrainian Nazis doing in Hong Kong? Well, they're helping Chinese or Hong Kong Antifa try and overthrow the Hong Kong government and shut down commerce and break the peg of the Hong Kong dollar. Is China more economically fascist than communist? It doesn't matter. These are all irrelevant terms. They're statists. They're corporatists. That's what they are. We're all corporatists. None of us are communists. None of these countries are communists. Chinese Communist Party is a misnomer today. Okay. Looks like these Morgan Stanley employees work for intelligence services to trigger off selling. BM Racer back in when this happened, I said that this was an intelligence operation, that they were trying to destroy the Turkish lira. I said it then. I have multiple articles up on my blog about this. So yeah, I agree with you on that. It looks like that's coming out in the wash now. That's just the way things work. I may be behind in the comments, guys. I'm scrolled through behind. You keep putting comments up. I'll eventually get to them. Who's going to bail us out when the U.S. crashes? No one. By the time we're done, we won't have any. We won't have any friends left in the world. By the time Trump is done alienating everybody, and the U.S. dollar starts to crash, say around 2022 or so, late 2022, we won't have any friends left. That's when the dollar's going to explode. Mark Bogosian says we have a generation of investment bankers raid on participation trophies with the inevitable results. Yeah, the whole world, Mark, is run by a committee of participatory medal winners. That pretty much is what describes the new leadership of the European Union. And committee of participatory medal winners is mine, but y'all are more than free to go out and use it to your heart's content. Let's see, what else have we got here? Read a few English translations of the Chinese classics. China has something like 24 dynasties, including the communist dynasty. China is less communist than the EU. But they're built along the same political systems. Thordium says Slovakia and Serbia are going to repatriate their gold, Tom. Everybody is hoarding as much gold as they can. That I agree with. And we're seeing central banks in 2018 were 15% of the total gold demand. That number will likely go up this year. Expect to see some buying by central banks in December again this year. I'll bet you the Hungarian central bank buys gold again this year. I bet you that will turn into an annual purchase on their part, rolling some of their trade surplus back into gold reserve. Have you heard Joseph Farrell at Giza Death Star? He quotes your articles. I have seen Giza Death Star. I know he quotes my articles. I thanked him a couple of times, and he's never actually replied to me in any way, manner, shape, or form. So that's cool that he does that. I've tried to engage with him, and I've gotten nowhere. So, but that's very cool. No, I've seen stuff like that before. So if anybody knows Joe, pass on my thanks. Prediction by North on 60 is that the Azov Battalion will be the Hong Kong version of the snipers that set off the Maidan in Ukraine. I agree with that completely, but here's the big one. We know about these guys before they did their bad, before they went off the rails. What China and Russia are both doing is to illuminate in the press all of these things before they happen, before they get out of control, in order to have, that's the thing that was never there before. We're seeing this now where the Chinese and the Russians are being very astute in pointing out, oh, by the way, these guys are here first. They're doing this, so that at some point, eventually, the lies get so big that no one can stand them anymore. And just having documenting this, the fuckery before it happens, makes it harder for more people to swallow the fuckery later on. And then you just have to, and then at that point, all we can do is resort to outright bullying. Well, if you don't believe us about this, Malaysia or Indonesia or whatever, well, then we'll just, destroy your economy. Does it sound familiar? That's what we're doing. Trump is doing a fine job of killing our economy because he's a 21st century president with a 17th century view on trade. Dragon M says, by the way, Dragon M, thank you for the note about me being a wise man about recommending Gazprom to everybody. This is the day when Turkstream is about ready to go online. Power Siberia, Nord Stream 2 is going to go through. Gazprom's getting into the freaking electricity generation business. It's a fucking brilliant. And they're going to professionalize, and you'll see over the course of the next 5 years that company will professionalize the way it's actually run. And so, as opposed to being run as an arm of the Russian government, they will eventually loosen up the reins of control on it, and it will be run more like a proper company. Meaning the dividends, the payout ratio of dividends to income, net income, is going to rise. They already did this once this year. They'll probably do it again next year. Let's watch to see what happens over the next 2 or 3 years with Gazprom. But I fully expect Gazprom to be the Apple of the 2020s, for much smaller multiples of Apple. But I think it's going to be one of those companies where you just kind of look at it and go, "How did I fucking miss this? This was trading at $4. What the fuck are we talking about here?" So Tucker Carlson just said that Russia is not the enemy and he favors them over Ukraine. He's absolutely right. He says China is the real enemy because he's Tucker Carlson and he's has his blind spots. I'm surprised he's still allowed on the air. China is the quote unquote real enemy, but even China is not really the enemy here. I mean, China's not good, but the best way we can help the Chinese people to resist the surveillance state and everything else is not to make the Chinese economy, not to destabilize the Chinese economy and hope for regime change. That shit don't work. What works is empowering people through bringing them up out of poverty. And then they demand more of their government. But we don't want to do that because we want to take over and control. We want to destabilize and then control. We don't want them to be free and independent and running around doing stuff, because then they could possibly become competitors to us. Don't you understand? And that's what's so fucking maddening and frustrating about all of this. When I listen to people talk about the United States and I listen to people talk about the West, I'm like, what the fuck do you think is going on here? Why do you think we do these things? Why do you think Donald Trump on the one hand does this stupid thing and then does something brilliant? Why do you think we can say that about every goddamn president that's ever come down the pike? Because the policy is not about doing the right thing, but doing the thing that maximizes the control for those that still think they can control the world. Tweety Bird asks, how will the Chinese Communist Party launder their money without Hong Kong? It's a good question, but offshore yuan, they have other offshore yuan clearing centers. Singapore, London, others, there are plenty of other ones. Just right now, Hong Kong still dominates. Dominates because it's cheap and it's easy and it's convenient and everything else. That can change. And if we destroy that, it will give the Chinese all that more reason to be paranoid of us, hate us, and then kick us in the fucking teeth harder when we're down. And move the business out of Hong Kong. Let's see. Alex Grant. Any chance Azov is just there for the chicken and fish balls? No. No. The Slovak Prime Minister says that he's going to repatriate their gold as quickly as possible because when the world economy crashes, they won't get it back because nobody believes the Bank of London will give it back. Absolutely right. Just like people repatriating their gold from the Fed. Trump doesn't get all the credit for destroying the economy. The Congress has willingly enabled it. That's true, Chad McLeod. You're right. There's no reason to believe that Trump is the only problem here. He's not. In many ways, he's doing a lot of good things domestically. It's his foreign policy and the way he treats foreign countries and foreign flows of foreign capital flows that are insane. But there's a lot of good things happening within the Trump administration domestically. A lot of bad regulation and legislation is getting wiped off the books at an astounding rates. The other reason why they fucking hate him, and all that stuff is good. So, how do you buy Gazprom in Canada? The Gazprom should have a depository receipt that trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange, or you get access to American. Have a broker with American stocks, and you buy the ADR, pink sheet ADR. But if you want to know where Gazprom is traded, go to investing.com, pop in Gazprom, and then there's a tab on every stocks page on investing.com where you can see the price on every exchange that it's traded on. If you see Toronto or you see the TSX Venture, well, guess what? Then trade it there. Let's see. Ben Graham would love Gazprom at this price. And it's only and remember, Mark, we were talking about it at $4 a share, and it's now trading at nearly $8. It's insane. Do you believe that China is really as much as a dictator as we are told? I don't know. I know that all governments suck. And that when you ask me that question from I know the direction that question comes from compared to what we're used to. I think they have a very, very sophisticated surveillance state. I think ours is only one step removed from it. I think we still have the somewhat legal fiction of having a rule of law and a constitution and all those things. The Chinese don't have it. The Brits don't have it either, by the way. The French certainly don't have it. Germans don't have it. Angela Merkel was talking about going full Stasi over the weekend. In order to save free speech, we have to curtail it. Yeah. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is knowledge. So I don't know. Mark, it's a good question. It's a fair question. All I can say is that it's not for us to decide. It's the same thing with Iran. It's the same thing with everywhere else in the world. Stoyanovich, Mark says, look, Mark, I've spent time in a communist country. The real issue for them is, do you pose a threat to the government and its function? It's the only thing they care about. And Marx replies, I know that Putin's not a dictator. I think what NATO has become is a hybrid of Nazism and Trotskyites. Both hate Russia. Ooh, very well said. Because the 800-pound gorilla in the room is that at some point we have to get over the fact we have to stop letting the Trotskyites who lost and got kicked out of Russia setting our foreign policy and trying to commit ritualistic suicide for the fucking world. Wow. Tenjin says, Israel's defense minister just asked amateur hackers around the world to attack Iran to free them. It's insane. From who? From what? Compared to the Israelis? I mean, seriously, like the mullahs are so terrible relative to the Israelis? Really? How is Joe Biden still in the race? Inertia? Do I give credence to Miles Kwok's story about the CCP? I don't know Miles Kwok at all. Meowcat says Miles Kwok is Bannon's best friend. I take anybody who is closely aligned with Bannon and is telling stories about China. I don't believe a fucking word of it. That's just until otherwise proven otherwise. I don't believe anything I hear. China has major authoritarian tendencies, according to Tenjin, but the population supports the government because of the economic gains they've experienced. See, lifting people out of poverty can be good. And how did the government do that? The government did that by liberalizing everything. And now they're trying to put a technocratic surveillance state in place that will enslave the people again. Sure. Will it last? I doubt it. I guess the question Al Vaccaro asks is, do you believe the tales about what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghurs? I firmly believe that the Chinese are doing horrible things. Yeah, I mean, what we did to Paul Manafort and Roger Stone was Gestapo tactics in every way imaginable. Soyanovich says Merkel going Stasi is natural considering she was one back in the day. Oh, I understand. Why do you think I brought that up? Because Merkel going back to her roots, and they aren't blonde. The main reason the Stasi file has never been opened: too many East and West Germans would be out of politics. The Israelis have the best hackers in the world. That may be true. But they're not better than the Russians, and they're certainly not better than Ukrainian programmers, apparently. How is Joe Biden not in jail for war crimes in the Donbass? Because he's running for president. Joe Biden, Victoria Nuland, John Kerry. We should dig fucking John McCain up out of the fucking grave and put him on goddamn Nuremberg trials for what that motherfucker did. Nuremberg style. Let's do it. Let's put his fucking corpse up there. I want to see the fucking skull with the brain tumor, the whole 9 yards. Put him up on the fucking stand. When these people when we put them up on the stand, Nuremberg style for what they did in Ukraine, I want McCain exhumed. And let's get the Hollywood guys to like prop up the thing and then animate it, make it talk, make it say stupid shit. Miles Kwok has been on with Kyle Bass bashing China. What else is new? I just don't listen to that shit anymore. It's not even, Jonathan. The point really is that the Chinese government is horrible, but our regime is only a couple of steps removed. That's true, and it's an important point. But at the same time, again, it's just not important. And if it is important to us, how other people live is not important to us. It's like people who complain about pay to win in gaming. Oh my God, this game's pay to win, and you can pay to get a level advance, and I have to slog through it. Why does he get to pay and I don't? Because you're not competing against him. You're playing your game. He's playing his. He trades time. He trades money for time, and you choose not to. You choose to hoard your money and spend your time. He chooses to spend his time and spend his money and hoard his time. The Chinese people, if they are unhappy with their government, will do something about it. It is not for us to try and overthrow their government. We are not trying to overthrow their government to free the Chinese people. Get that fucking shit out of your head. Flush out your headgear, new guy. We don't waste gooks for freedom. This is a slaughter. Animal Mother. Full Metal Jacket. We do this purely for our oligarch benefit. No other fucking reason. No other reason. Period. When you get that truly into your skull, into your soul, you will understand what's fucking happening in the world. Until you do that, you don't get to be woke. It's just that simple. I'm glad McStain is gone, says Stan Mitchell, but is the world that much better off now? No, it really isn't. This is my rifle. Good. I know you do, Jonathan. I was actually speaking to you. That was the royal you I was speaking to. You always should be cleaning up your own shit in your own backyard. Don't look at by focusing on how terrible this is the Steve Bannon Navy intelligence bullshit. Get everybody focused on how evil China is. China is the real problem. Dude, you have a fucking authoritarian regime at home wanting to build the same goddamn system. What are you doing about it? Oh, we're going to distract you with the China boogeyman. Fuck the China boogeyman. China boogeyman don't matter. Relatively speaking. Our own boogeyman is right here at fucking home. Sinister goddamn people appropriating and stealing your wealth. And you've got them fighting about technology transfer. If Apple didn't want to transfer technology to fucking China, Apple doesn't have to transfer technology to China if they don't want to do business over there. Just that simple. It's not Trump's job to protect Apple from itself and its own bad goddamn decisions. If we didn't have such a fucking militaristic fucking nightmare here, we wouldn't have this. We wouldn't have these worries. It's all bullshit. 99% of this fucking national security shit is all crap. Doesn't mean anything. National security is a fucking oxymoron. And if you really want to fight the socialism in your backyard, and you want to fight China's socialism and everything else, then you work for monetary independence. You work for money that is independent of governments. Because it's through the friggin' ability to print and manipulate the value of the currency that you use every day to live your life that gives them all their goddamn power. And you pay for it every goddamn day. And they do it in your name. Here's your tax money. Here's my buck. Here you go. Have it. Take it. Take it. Go bomb brown people with it. Here you go. Fucking who gives a shit if there are backdoors in the iPhones? I don't care anymore. You're gonna get woke, get woke. Otherwise, get fuck off. Should have cut this off about 7 minutes. As former law enforcement, says Mark Shear, I can tell you that the Chinese police are showing remarkable restraint. I assume you're meaning in Hong Kong. Apple made a good decision to recognize Crimea as Russian. Absolutely. Yeah, and Meowcat, don't take what I said as a response to you. I just in the middle of my rant, I just happened to see that, and it just triggered me off. If my apologies if that came across wrong. All right, it's 1:05. All I'm going to do is rant from here on out, and by God, I don't need to do any more of that shit today. I've had a long day. I'm tired. I'm done. I really appreciate it. I had a good time tonight. Needed to get this out of my system. Obviously. If you like what you heard tonight, give a like and subscribe down below. I think I will actually be able to. I think I might have actually be able to figure out how to schedule the next stream. So I'll put that up on the YouTube channel. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, or not. I don't care. This channel may not exist in 9 days anyway. So if it doesn't, then we'll do this on DLive. And if YouTube gets rid of me, and if they don't, if somehow I miraculously make the cut of something that is, I don't know, commercially viable, even though it's not, hey, whatever. You guys take care. You be well. Yeah, keep your stick on the ice.